Hi, this is Jim Basala with Lake County Parks and Recreation Department in Northwest Indiana. We're here today at Deep River County Park talking about maple syrup. We've been making maple syrup at Deep River since the late 1970s, and we want to explain a little bit to you on how we do it and how you can do it at home. Let's start with the tree, because without a tree you can't make maple syrup. This is a springtime kind of an operation starting in February, lasts maybe 6, not much more than 8 weeks. It is a North American activity, Northeast United States and up into Canada. No place else in the world can do what we do here in this part of the country. And what we will do is we will tap this tree, which is a sugar maple, and by drilling a hole into the tree, the sap will run as it wants to start growing in the spring. We will collect it and take about 40 gallons of sap, which has 2-3% sugar in it, and remove 39 gallons of water to create a gallon of syrup. Now, how do I know this is a sugar maple? Well, my staff asks that all the time. I can tell you that I can look at the bark. It's got this smooth, somewhat corrugated bark. To me, this just says sugar maple. But another way, if you're in the winter and there's no leaves out, is this branch. Sugar maple has what's called opposite branching. If you notice, the branches come out opposite, all right? Not a lot of tree species do that. So you would look up into the tree and go, oh yeah, that's opposite branching. And if you can get a picture up close of the buds, this is what a sugar maple bud looks like. It's conical, it's pointed, and this is classic sugar maple branching and buds. Any of the maples are able to be tapped. Like I said, this is sugar maple, black maple, silver maple, red maple, and even box elder, which is in the maple family, can be tapped for sap to be turned into syrup. Walnuts and birches can also be tapped, but honestly, I've never done it, so I don't know anything about it. But this is the process. You start with the trees, you drill a hole about 5/16 of an inch, about 1.5 inches or so deep, and then the sap will run out when the conditions are right, which is temperatures during the day of about 40 degrees and at night below freezing, and that will cause the sap to run. There's a lot more conditions that go with it, but it's close enough. And what's happening is the tree is wanting to move sap and nutrients up to the buds this time of the year that cause the buds to swell and grow. And once they become leaves, then they go through photosynthesis and create sugar for the tree to go, and then that is stored in the tree in the fall so that it can start this process all over again. So here we are at another sugar maple tree. You can tell by the bark, but you can see a bucket hanging off of a spile or a spout. This is a metal spout, and then the sap, if it was running, would come down this spout and into the bucket, and this is how you collect it. And then what you have to do is go around and collect all your buckets, take it to wherever you're going to boil it, and process it. Now, this is a hole. It's like 5/16 inch diameter, and it's important to know how to tap. You're going to go about 1.5 inches or so into the wood, into the sapwood, but you don't want to tap in the same spot every year. What happens is that this tree will heal itself and will form scar tissue, and it looks like this. So there's a distance above and below the hole and to the sides that scar tissue will form, and that'll keep sap from flowing. So a rule is to move over 6 inches up 2. So you start as low as you can, and you just keep going around the tree, spiraling up until you can't do it any higher, and then start back at the bottom. And by then, on a healthy tree, the hole should have scarred over, and fresh sapwood and cambium should be over that hole. And if we get a close-up, this is an old tap hole, probably from last year or the year before, and you can see how it's healed. But again, there is scar tissue on each side and up and down that. So you don't want to tap in this because you aren't going to get anything. That wood is now dead and it's scarred over. But as time goes on, this tree will continue to grow, and you can keep tapping. Another thing is you don't want to tap a tree that's too small or too young. So you want to tap a tree that is at least 10 inches in diameter. Not circumference, but in diameter. Just take a ruler, measure it. So 10 inches and above, you can put one tap in it. Somewhere around 16, 18 inches, you can go to 2 taps, and then once you're in the 20s, you can put 3 taps in a tree. So you would have 1, 2, 3, and then you just keep working your way around. You will not over tap the tree. You will not hurt the tree will heal, and particularly if it's a good, healthy tree. We are in our sugar shack here at Deep River County Park. This may seem intimidating. This is called an evaporator, and we'll get into how you can do this at home. But this is a much more commercial way to handle large amounts of sap. Modern evaporators are bigger with hoods. They may use oil fire, gas fire, but it's all the same basic principle of boiling away water as fast as you can to make syrup. If you remember, and if we can take a look, there's about 40 jugs hanging up on the wall. In order to make 1 gallon of syrup, you would have to fill all those jugs up with sap and reduce it to just 1 gallon jug. So it takes a lot of work, and this just makes it happen faster. This evaporator has what's called a firebox or an arch, and we build a wood fire in this, and all the gases and the fumes and the flames work underneath this evaporator and then go out the smokestack. This is called the sap pan. This is a syrup pan, and the sap pan starts the boiling process with, amazingly enough, the sap. And you can see sap is clear. Remember, this is only 3% sugar and 97 more or less % water. And as it boils and the steam goes out through the top of the building, sap flows in a more concentrated method, and the syrup will start to darken and thicken. Now this has got a long way to go. We are at the end of our season here in Northwest Indiana, and some of this is starting to be taken down, so it's kind of knocked apart. But when it's all said and done, we can open up this valve and draw off syrup, or nearly completed syrup. And how do we know that? We know it by watching this thermometer. One of the key things, no matter where you're doing it, is maple syrup with 66 more or less % sugar in it will boil 7 degrees higher than the boiling point of water, which is roughly 212 degrees. So syrup boils at about 219. I say roughly because depending on elevation, barometric pressure, water boils at different temperatures. And if you're really making syrup and you're not doing it at home, you want to know what you're at in order to meet the U.S. Department of Ag recommendations. You don't want it to be too thin, you don't want it to be too thick. So you do a lot of calibration in the whole process. If you take a look over to the other side of the sugar shack, you can see this is an old evaporator we had, and you get a better look of what's inside. These are called flues, and actually underneath is where the flame is coming from. So you're getting a lot of surface area in this type of operation. These are called raised flues because they raise up into the pan. Drop flues drop out of the pan. But if you're doing this at home, you have to get rid of the water. You can buy small hobby rigs that would allow you to do that. That's an expense. I know people that have put it in pots and put it on a turkey fryer and boiled it away. They have done it on a grill. The whole key is to take what you've collected and boil it down until you get to syrup. Don't do it in the house, because you're taking 39 gallons of water, converting it to steam, and that has a tendency to remove wallpaper and cause other issues when you're putting that much moisture into your house. You can finish it on the stove, get it really close, and then on the stove, finish it off to when you know it's syrup. And how do you know it's syrup? That's a good question. And let's see if I can get some of this out of this pan. When it comes off this scoop, you can tell how it's thicker, all right? And if you notice how it's coming off in ribbons at the end, it's called waxing or sheeting. And when it comes off in that kind of a ribbon, you know you're into syrup. So that's a way to do it without a thermometer, without anything else. It's like making any other kind of candy, and you want it to drip off in a sheet. This could probably go just a little bit farther, but at some point when you're doing this at home, it's a matter of your own personal taste and what you want to do. This can is collecting syrup that we've collected that's been filtered, and we use felt filters like this to remove what's known as sugar sand. You can use coffee filters at home, you could use other methods. What happens as the sap boils down, the minerals and salts that are in the sap naturally will precipitate out and create what's called sugar sand. It's not harmful, there's nothing wrong with it except nobody likes crunchy syrup. So you try to remove that the best you can. If you don't have a good filter, let it sit in the jar for a week or two, and all that will precipitate to the bottom, and then you can pour it off and just toss away the sugar sand. And once that's done, you need to put it in a clean container at home, seal it up. If the container has been sanitized and taken care of, you don't have to refrigerate it. Go ahead if you want. If after a while the syrup was to form mold on it, you can scrape that off and then reboil it. The mold is not growing in the syrup. What's happened is water has floated to the top of the syrup and the mold's on that. Nothing harmful happens, so syrup will last a long time. There's so much sugar in this that it's hard for anything harmful to grow in the syrup. So you're going to need some specialized pieces of equipment in order to do maple syrup. First, you need something to collect the sap in. This is one type of spout or spile, and then this part, if I get it right here, is driven into the tree. When you drive it into the tree, tap it into the tree. Drive is a bad term. If you go too hard, you could crack the bark or that part of the tree, and it would cause leakage and also an increased chance of infection. This takes a tube that goes on the end. There's also a metal spile, which we sell all of this at Deep River, and you can find stuff online. But this bucket hangs on a spile, and then the sap will drip out of the tree through the spile or the spout into the bucket, which has a lid, and the lid is there to keep rainwater out. It's not tight. You will at times, depending on the time of the year, maybe get some ants or other things going in there because it's sweet. Skim that off before you start boiling, and then as you boil, have some kind of slotted spoon or skimmer because you will get foam, and you can skim off impurities that are created as you go along. This is another type of tap. A spout will go into here, and then a bag hangs from this bracket to collect the sap. Just another method. Some people take 5-gallon buckets that they purchase at a big box store or for wherever, make sure they're good and clean, and then they will use tubing out of the tree, out of a spout like this, into the bucket and collect it that way and set the bucket on the ground. Any way to collect the sap, as long as you can keep it clean and fresh and sanitary. Yeah, the best you can keep it sanitary hanging on a tree. This is some cheesecloth that we sell that is also helpful in filtering out the sap and the syrup as things go along. I would point out that when you tap the tree, the sap will come out clear, and if you hold it too long, it's going to get milky and cloudy, and it's going to start losing its high quality. Things are acting in the sap to eat up the sugars, so you're going to start having a little bit lower quality sap. So you want to process it as fast as you can, and as with anything in nature, you're going to get moments of really good flow in the early part of the season or throughout, and moments where it doesn't flow. Maybe it stops and it freezes and you just have to kind of wait. That's just the way it is. This is not anything that's on a strict calendar, and this is reality. This isn't virtual, augmented, artificial. It is whatever nature wants us to do. So you got to be ready to do it when the time comes. So here at Deep River, when it's all said and done, we bottle our syrup, and you can see it has a nice light amber color. This is classic. This is really good quality syrup. And you can take it all the way down to sugar. For those of you who are into numbers, a gallon of syrup weighs 11 pounds. And you can make 8 pounds of sugar. So in essence, you're removing 3 pounds of water, which is almost a half a gallon. So you have to be very careful that you don't burn your syrup at the end when you're finishing it off and taking it to syrup or even farther, because it will go quickly and it will burn. If while you're finishing your syrup, it starts to bubble up and you're getting a lot of foaming, a little bit of butter on top of the syrup will break those bubbles and it will calm down. Again, this is what we do at Deep River County Park, which is part of the Lake County Parks and Recreation Department. We invite you to our webpage, which is lakecountyparks.com, for more information for the time on this program or any other number of programs that we have throughout the department. And if you visit Deep River, you could maybe catch us making syrup, grinding cornmeal in our grist mill, or maybe even a vintage baseball game. So we invite you to come out and go to our webpage. Once again, lakecountyparks.com.